Okay, a quick screencast here on creating footnotes. I know some of you, it's the first time you've used footnotes, and so I'm just going to give you a quick guide on how to put them together. It is a little bit unusual in our case because we're using this collection of essays, and so it's worthwhile for you to see a quick concrete example of this. Part of the whole thing of creating footnotes is just how to do it, and most of you are using Microsoft Word, and you'll see that in the insert command function, there's a footnote. You can just create it there. And it allows you to toggle back and forth between footnotes and endnotes if you wish, and I don't care which one you use. I prefer footnotes. This is what you're looking at is some of my own writing here. I tend to use footnotes because I like them to see them right on the page that I'm working at. But endnotes are fine, whichever you prefer, that's fine. Most of you, though, are more concerned about what goes into the footnote and how to figure that out. The basic outline is pretty simple. You identify the author, you identify the title, you identify the publishing information. And of course, that's a way to verify the quality of the reference you're using, that it's verifiable as a good source. We've got a collection. Often footnotes are pretty simple. They just give you the author, the title of the book, and the publishing information, the page, and so on. Ours is a little more complex. Ours requires a reference to both the author of the essay that we're using, and then the title of the essay, and then the book title, and then the names of the editors of the book, and then followed by the publishing information. So there's a kind of generic guide to all of that. So let's see how that plays out in a real example. Let's say you're citing Rosalind Trigger's essay on the Irish in Montreal and Toronto in the middle of the 19th century. This is a good example of the kind of text we'll be using in our referencing. So you'll see that there's Rosalind Trigger's name at the top, and there's the title of her essay, St. Patrick's Day Processions in 19th Century Montreal and Toronto. So that seems pretty straightforward. A number of you, however, have pointed out that there's this other thing down here at the bottom of the page, this other reference, and have said, well, maybe I should use that reference. That looks like it's the proper reference. It's the source for the material. It is, but it's not where you read it. The editors of this book took that material and put it into this book, and they rearranged it for presentation to students. So you can see it's significantly shortened. It's 160 and 160 to 60, 65 to 68, and 160. So it's portions of the larger essay condensed for this book. So we're not working with that material. We're working with the material from the book. So use the title at the top of the page that the authors use there, and of course use her name there as well. So there it is, pretty simple. Rosalind Trigger, St. Patrick's Day Processions in 19th century Montreal and Toronto. Of course, the problem is you're using the book, and you need to reference the book because that reference doesn't mean anything. Say you've taken a quote from page 266, as I'm indicating here. You need to indicate where that 266 is, what book that's in. So we need to have the book information in this footnote as well for it to make sense. So here's our book. It's the Visions textbook, the Canadian History Modules Project. There's the title, has the authors, or sorry, not the authors, the editors of the text there, Bryden, Coates, Lux, Marks, Martel, and Sampson. It's a custom edition published for Brock University. If you go, you'll see that that's kind of just partial names and so on. If you go to the inside, not the inside front cover, but the inside of the first page, you'll see all the information there. You'll see Penny Bryden, Colin Coates, and so on. So you can quickly create a single proper reference for this book. And there it is. Penny Bryden, Colin Coates, Maureen Lux, Lynn Marks, Marcel Martel, and Daniel Sampson, eds of the Visions, the Canadian History Modules Project, Pre-Confederation Custom Edition, published in Toronto by Nelson in 2018. And that's a bit weird because it's not 2018 yet. But anyhow, and there's the page numbers that we'll be working with. And so you put those two together, the reference to the specific piece with the book reference, and there it is, Rosalind Trigger, St. Patrick's Day Processions in 19th century Montreal and Toronto in Penny Bryden, Colin Coates, and so on. There's your full reference. Now, typically, you won't be citing the whole essay like I did here, see 266 to 77, that's the whole thing. Typically, you'll be referencing a particular page number. You could cite the whole essay in general, that's for sure. But I think in most instances, you'll have a quotation or something that you're particularly referencing there. So it might only be like 267 or something like that, just that actual page. So that's pretty simple. You might also look at this and go, oh my God, do I have to do this every time in a footnote? No. Once you've done it once you've provided all the information that the reader needs, you can then resort to what's called a short form. And here's a short form, and you can see it's quite short. So the next time you cite Trigger, you'll probably cite Trigger if you're doing your essay on the Irish immigration chapter. You might cite her 3, 4, 5 times. I have no idea, but say 3, 4, 5 times. In subsequent citations of Trigger, you just need this short form. Trigger, St. Patrick's Day Processions, page 272, or whatever page it is. So it's a pretty simple process. So that's it. That's how we create footnotes, and that's the information that we need to have in them. And that's the form you would use with our textbook in this course. So I hope that was helpful for you. If you had already figured that out, great. If you came up with something close to this, and you're off by a detail or two, don't worry too much. We're not going to grade you on absolute precision on these things. If you have a period where there should be a comma and weird little details like that, don't worry about it. As long as you're covering that basic information, we'll be satisfied with this. But this is the way to do it properly. Best of luck with those essays. Take care.